What if we're all puzzle pieces and the answers we seek live in the connections? That was a great quote this morning from my new friend, Rebecca Tasetano from the virtual lab from Project Kickass. And she's my guest this morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from across the web. I'm Todd Nielsen. This is Talk About Your Community, a weekly, lately it's been semi-weekly live stream show on LinkedIn. We're going to be getting better with that. More news on that in a second as we go ahead. The purpose of this show is to highlight all the things happening in the online community space, where online communities intersect with the offline space, what kinds of new technologies are having an impact on how we connect meaningfully with each other online. And so what happened today, to bring my guest in, well, I'll bring on screen in just a second, is Rebecca and I met at a virtual event that was run through a platform called Topia, which is really kind of a next generation virtual Metaversal type of 3D environment, where we just had a blast running around. We'll be talking about that a little bit today. Rebecca does a lot of work in events management. We'll have her introduce herself a little bit about that and move on from there. As far as the schedule of the show goes, I've gotten a little off schedule in the last couple of months, largely because of consultancy work has taken me away from doing regular scheduling. I've had a few challenges. Just kind of keeping up with getting people scheduled ahead of time. But the good news is that I've hired my first intern this week, and her name is Tiana, and she is doing some amazing work for me already. And hopefully she's going to be able to help me with some of my scheduling and getting StreamYard configured and set up and all the graphics and those pieces, while me not sacrificing any time to serve some of the customers that I serve directly. So without any further ado, I really want to bring in Rebecca so we can get launched into our conversation here. If you are in the chat, please check in. Let us know if you have any questions or comments as we go in. I love this to be a live interactive session. And if you happen to tune in to this on the playback, as I know many people do, please drop in your comments and questions. I do read them all. I try to respond to everybody, and definitely love the interactions that we can make. So with that, let me bring on here on the stage, Rebecca. Hey, so good to see you again. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Doing great. Like I said, I've been drinking from the fire hose a little bit the last couple of weeks with everything going on, but I'm so glad we have a chance to get together and catch up with each other, because I think the last time we really had a chance to speak substantially was at the unconference that was run by Topia.
And it was great. I am such a big fan of Topia. I tell everybody that I know about Topia and try to get my virtual events clients to use Topia because there's just so much potential there. And I was so excited for the unconference and just to see what it was like. And then we could talk about it, but we kind of went on a total side mission that wound up being amazing and hilarious and like full of connection. And, especially when you make virtual events, you try to plan everything out and you try to create an experience for everybody. But I think the beauty of Topia and the beauty of real life is that there's these serendipitous connections that can happen when you go off script and you just, interact the way that you want to, and then magic happens. So love Topia, loved the unconference, and I'm so glad that we went on a side mission and that we met there.
Me too. I love that phrase, serendipitous connections. That's what I'm totally about. I love the conversations that emerge naturally, and I know we don't have a planned script for this either. That may be for good or for ill, but I enjoy just getting to know somebody and talk about the work they do and what they are excited about and what kind of brings them back to their job day after day. That's for me. I haven't been in community. I haven't been a community professional, community strategist for my entire career. This is like maybe career number 4 or 5 for me. But I feel like I found home because of how I've ended up here. But I would say, like, if there was a thread throughout my career, it was always about helping people find meaningful work and meaningful connections with each other. Even back when I was doing a job as a recruiter, and before that, in a prior career as a journalist, that was always topmost in my mind. And so I always love people who have that same orientation.
Yeah, and I feel like we both do. And this is such an exciting time to be living in, because maybe a community manager existed before. I'm sure it did. I'm sure that there have been communities before the internet, but we're living in such an interesting and amazing time where community is getting more and more important. And especially as a result of the pandemic, I personally have felt so much more disconnected. I've never been like less connected that in person than I am right now. And it's a weird feeling. And at the same time, because of the internet, I've made so many connections with people that are not in my geographical location and have become really important to me. And this idea of community and connection and helping other people, the fact that we're kind of on the cutting edge of this community revolution where everybody's going to start to feel the same way as we do about those connections is really exciting to me. So I love that you're capitalizing on that by having this podcast and having guests and making those serendipitous connections happen.
I love everything about what you just said. That's amazing. Yeah. So I think, the ways that we find connections with others, have multiplied exponentially since we've had the internet. And online communities arguably have been with us since the very earliest days of the internet, with listservs and, discussion forums. They've continued and evolved over time into social media networks. And we still have things like discussion forums and everything around with us. But now we have even more powerful ways to connect socially with others, with video and with metaverse environments, VR and AR kinds of things. All these things they're on the horizon and coming into play right now. And I know you're at the forefront of that in what you do. So why don't we pause there for a second, and why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you ended up coming up with Project Kickass, which I love the name of that, and the virtual lab, and sort of what brings you into this space to talk about a little bit.
Yeah. So going way, way, way back when I was tiny, when I was 4, my parents decided serendipitously, and we can go back to that, to have a clown business and to do clowning at children's birthday parties. And, go ahead.
That's amazing. I love it. Yeah.
Right? Really shortening it down. I was their oldest child, and they wanted to have an amazing 4th birthday for me. And so they kind of did it very homegrown style. They took kids' tapes and games and put them together and taught themselves how to make balloon animals, and did a really great job throwing a 4th birthday party for me. And all the kids that were there weren't really my friends. They were my parents' kids, right? And so my parents' friends' kids. So my parents' friends were like, hey, can you do my kid's birthday party? Can you do my kid's birthday party? And it turned into this whole thing, and then it turned into a business. And so I grew up in, walking into atmospheres where I didn't know anybody, but it was my job to make a party happen. And so I would be like 8 years old and like getting adults and kids to make a circle, and we'd, do parachutes or like do games, or I would do face painting, or we had a hula hoop show. And I just had to get comfortable getting up in front of people and saying, hey, we're going to do the chicken dance. It's going to be fun. And get adults to come in and like let their guard down and actually have a good time and be a kid and feel that again. So I've like always had that connection to getting people together and making a good time happen. And so I think that is really my roots. But a lot like you, in every situation that I've been in, I've always wanted to make sure that people aren't in the corner feeling weird and not feeling connected. Like I'm always trying to get people to come together and make something happen. So in January of 2020, I started an LLC, and I had this whole grand vision. And then, as we know, in April of 2020, the pandemic really hit, and everything that I had planned for my business kind of went out the window. We were going to be Salesforce consultants, and we do Salesforce consulting, but I was in this position where I had to get everybody in my life up on Zoom. So I was the president of a Toastmasters club. And so I was like, okay, we're going to get up on Zoom. Like everything that I was doing, I was like, we're going to get on Zoom. We're going to get on Zoom. And maybe you found yourself in a similar situation. And then I just kind of kept trying to learn more and help people with what I learned. And that turned into the Virtual Success Lab, where we help people to get broadcast ready and make their Zoom window look the way that they want it. But we also share best practices amongst each other for, this is how I've found virtual success, and let me show you how to do it too. So that's the idea behind the Virtual Success Lab. And we can go into Project Kick-Ass a little bit later on.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's terrific. Yeah, like you, I do a lot of things at the local level as well as the global, and so I'm involved with my local business association, and I'm a Rotarian. So we were definitely in this situation where people who were unfamiliar with or potentially had antipathy for Zoom or online meetings, and increasingly had antipathy for them, were asked to go online and to have just regular interaction. And so for those of us like you and I that live in these spaces, and we're more accustomed to them, we end up having to be the translator for a lot of these situations, and to help try to take the sting out of what's involved. And I think a lot of it is unfamiliarity, and just as humans, we're hesitant to try new things, I think, in a lot of cases. And there's a few of us that are, if you look at sort of the early adopter or the adoption curve for things, the early adopters were just a little sliver of people that are willing to jump in and try the new tech, and to try something that's never been tried before, because of the novelty of the experience. But we need to be mindful of those who come after us, and maybe sort of what's involved with getting them over that hump. So that's the kind of stuff that you do, is to kind of work them through some of those barriers to entry for online experiences. I bet you have some more stories about that.
Yeah, I think we all do. And I think about that bell curve all the time. It's just like in the front of my mind all the time, because when we talk about Web3, and when we talk about virtual connection, when we talk about virtual communities, I'm at the very, that 3%. I'm right there. I want to like jump in, but there are so many other things in my life that I'm like I'm on, like my phone is like an iPhone 7. Like they're going to kick me off. I need to get another phone. So I empathize, and I totally understand that as human beings, there are things that we feel really comfortable with. And then there are other things that could completely benefit our lives that we've been burned by before, or that we just are scared that we're going to look silly. There's so many reasons why we're not at the forefront of the bell curve, and we're not at the forefront of the bell curve on everything. And so I have a lot of empathy and understanding for people that this is a brand new world. But at the same time, I think that it's important for us to know that virtual connection isn't going anywhere. And I mean, we're all on our phones all the time. And if that's going to be an immersive experience that feels a lot like real life, it's inevitable that we're going to go there as a species. And I also think that this virtual versus in-person thing is a false dichotomy. I think sometimes you want to be virtual, sometimes you want to be in person, and it's going to depend. And you're probably not going to live all in one world or all in the other world. And so to get comfortable being virtual is really important, and going to be increasingly important.
I think you're absolutely right about that. I find discussions that try to sanitize things into online community versus offline, the lines are blended, and I've often maintained that the best online communities have some offline components to them. There's a bleed that happens between them, and vice versa. And I think a lot of it has to do with our online identities are more fluid than our offline identities, and it is plural for that. We represent ourselves differently in different online spaces. I talk about and say different things in Facebook than I do on Twitter or LinkedIn or anywhere else I happen to be. So we represent ourselves differently, and when we join online communities, we may be putting on our professional selves, for those spaces, or we may be experimenting with other elements of our identity that we're maybe not comfortable expressing, with other people. And so those need to be protected and safe spaces for people to interact. But they're all valuable. And I think that they all teach us something about ourselves as we go. So that's really terrific. So do you sort of have a program that you take people through as they're thinking about, using more online events or interacting with each other online? What kinds of things do you do for somebody?
Yeah. So we at Project Kickass, which started out as a sheet of paper that my boyfriend wrote before he was my boyfriend, he wrote at the top Project Kickass and then proceeded to write a full page, and on the back of the page, everything that you would need to do to start a business and make an impact. I mean, it was just in his brain. He just dumped that out on a piece of paper, and it was just incredible to me. And I mean, yeah, I can't, I like increasingly love him more every day, but that's where Project Kickass came from. So what we do at Project Kickass, which we sometimes call PKA Solves, is we do virtual events. We do getting people broadcast ready, and we're rolling out a deliverable that's community as a service, which we can touch on a little bit later. So it really started out by just, at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody needed to go virtual, and especially nonprofits were kind of reaching out to me and saying, we expect this much of donations. We count on these events to keep us going, and you're the person that we've been referred to make that happen. Can you take our in-person event and translate it to online? So that was the first thing that we did, and that's what we excel at, is having virtual events that are engaging and that actually feel like an interaction between the audience and the presenters. Because if you're not going to have that serendipitous connection, engaging piece, if you're not going to be talking to the people that are watching, then just send me the video, right? Just like shorten it down, send me a video clip. I can watch it on my own time. Like if we're going to get synchronous, like let's use that to our advantage. So that's really the first part of Project Kickass and what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just had to put that on for my friend Amadou. He's a wonderful community builder. And he and I've had some wonderful interactions. We actually do International Community Day together. And and his instincts are always dead on too. So wonderful to see. Thanks for joining, Amadou. So now I was thinking, like in making events engaging online, in building that space, I think all of us have experienced sort of this dead zone of having to log into, conferences, webinars, even Zoom meetings with each other. And it's the same thing over and over again. Like, what do you do to shake people up? Like, I know you talked about when you were a little kid, hey, we're all going to do the chicken dance together. Like, do we have to do the equivalent of the chicken dance together to kind of change up sort of the same old feel of these digital events? Or like, what do you do to shake people up a little bit?
We might have to, because like you were talking about, that we bring different selves to different online environments. We're looking for cues of what's expected of me here. How do I show up in a way that I'm, connected? And is this for me, or is this for my boss, or is this for am I here for status? Am I here to kind of like just, have this event on, but not really be paying attention? I want the event to serve the people that come there, and I want them to be co-creating the event as much as possible, and having opportunities to connect with each other and to figure out what that means. So we try to, the great thing is that I think everybody felt this pain in early 2020. And so a plethora of ways that you can add excitement to just even your Zoom meetings with the Zoom apps and the games that are right at your fingertips in Zoom now, and the music that's right at your fingertips in Zoom now is totally different than it was even 2 years ago. But we utilize things like texting, a phone number that then your response to a poll can be displayed on the screen, or asking for, participation in the chat, obviously creating spaces for breaks. Breaks are really important in online events, and networking, giving people opportunities to be in small groups and discuss what they learned or discuss why they came or what's important. All of those things are tricks that we use to make sure that it's not just a television broadcast and that the event that you're going to is actually serving you and that there's that interactive component. And there are definitely times for the broadcast part of it too, but my favorite events are the ones where you get to decide, you get the agency, you get to connect with people in the way that makes sense to you in the moment.
Yeah, I love that. I think back on, some of the events that stand out in my mind that I've participated in online, and there, some of them have been a little hokey. Things that you got to do. There was a recent one that I was on where everybody was asked to get up and lead a dance move. For everybody, which is great because we sit in seats way too much. Right now it's kind of a pain. It's okay, but even that, like, I could see, like, if I was trying to do that at a local level with some of the people that I work with and know in my hometown here, that might be a little iffy. If I would get the participation, or they might not ever show up at one of my meetings again if I put them on the spot like that. But figuring other ways, like there was a training event that I went to that I thought was really well run. Prior to the event, they actually sent they shipped a box of different envelopes for me, and like at different points in the event, we had to open the envelope, and there was like something in there. It was like a gift or a book, or there was like I even show you. Like, I'm going to step off screen for a second.
Please do.
These are cool. These
this is huge. The physical, and creating a physical component to your event is huge, and creating an experience that people can go through together and be delighted through together step by step is huge. I'm super excited for this.
Like we were given these paddles with different emojis on them. These were hilarious, and then as people were doing the event, they were invited to use these to express themselves, rather than the straight reaction, emoticons, in the Zoom meetings that were there, and it was powerful. It was because it sort of changed the game for everybody, because there was a prop to play with. There was something, to do. Or there've even been cases where one of the presenters came in with a false face mask, or did something to just kind of shake things up a little bit. I love those. But I think, another way, to go about this is to step away from the Zoom mentality entirely and do something like what we experienced in Topia. And I was wondering if maybe we could talk about that a little bit, because it was such an amazing experience to do that. I had a blast. I know you did too. To give everybody a little bit of background about this, we went to an unconference event that was hosted by Topia. I think there was maybe about 100 people that showed up for it. And Brooke Daly is the community manager. Hey, Brooke, I'm going to give you a shout out for this. We basically came in. There were a set of topics, and if you've never been to an unconference before, that was actually what hooked me in. That I've run unconferences before, and so I kind of knew what was going to be happening. And they're awesome because you're just sort of setting the agenda on the fly. Like, everybody throws up ideas about what they want to do, and then there's a vote. And then you divide up into tables or sections, and you go talk about it. Well, the Topia virtual environment lets you set up, like, basically physical virtual spaces to go to have, sort of small group conversations that were there. So I think we got into groups of 9, and we were in the same group talking about the metaverse and community, and kind of got together from that. So insanity ensued after that, as I recall. So
yeah, I feel like there's a lot to break down here. So Topia, I think that a lot of people watching probably know what Topia is, but Topia, you kind of get a little avatar and you get to walk around a virtual world. And I think the magic of Topia is that, one, it's the metaverse, which it totally broke my concept of what the metaverse is. What even is the metaverse? We're all figuring it out. And two, I've heard it described as a 2.5D metaverse. So the barrier to entry is really low, because as long as you have the internet and a keyboard or a mouse, you can walk around this virtual world and have your own experience, which I think is really cool. So go ahead.
Totally. Yeah, the way I conceive of that thing, it almost looks like a family game night game board. You're sort of like looking at it on an angle, and it's like the game of life or Monopoly or something like that. And you've got little weebles that you move around on the board, but above them you've got your video picture. Interact with anybody else. Yeah, so you can see each other, but you don't that video doesn't come into play until you come into close enough proximity with somebody else in the environment. So it really is kind of it is that metaversal idea, but it's not implemented in a way that you see a lot of sort of the 3D virtual. It's almost like a lot of them are sort of first person shooter environments like you would see in a video game.
Yeah, 100%. And with Topia, I keep thinking about this because Topia, it doesn't allow you to change your avatar. You're like a little pink person or a little green person or a blue person, and you get to choose what color, but that's it. And that goes really fast. You might not even choose your color, but it kind of gives you the sense of having a body and being able to walk around the virtual environment and explore. And then your face doesn't come into place until I get close enough to Todd that then my face shows up and my audio shows up. So there's that spatial recognition where if you get close to somebody, all of a sudden you can talk to them. And then if you decide to not talk to them anymore, as you move away, you stop seeing their face. So it gives you this ability to have the serendipitous connections where you decide, I want to go over here. Nope, I want to go over here. Oh yeah, I do want to be over here. Okay, now I want to go over there. And you get to have that agency that you're just not going to find in a Zoom meeting.
I think, yeah, the agency is huge because, like, if you go back to self-determination theory about what gets people motivated about things, one of those is autonomy, right? I've got the ability to make meaningful choices. And when you're in a Zoom meeting, you're talking to who you're talking to. They're all in that space. There's no avoiding them. But the serendipitous meeting, that ability for me to wander around in an environment and to meet people by chance and have those encounters is amazing. And that's exactly what happened to us, right?
Yeah, it did. We kind of went off script. So Unconference was amazing and they did a great job, but we kind of went off script where there is this big presentation happening, and a lot like in real life, like sometimes you decide like, this conference room is not for me right now. I need to go step into the hallway. And it just so happened that Todd was in, I'll call it the hallway, and I wound up being there too. And then I got pulled into conversation. And then we had an entirely different adventure than was planned for us at Unconference. And it totally fit in because it's Unconference. And the whole point was we're going to figure out what happens here, and whatever happens here is the right thing. So we went on a side mission and it was wonderful. And it led to this podcast.
Yeah, and it was true to the spirit of an unconference, which is vote with your feet, right? Like if something is not an immediately relevant conversation for you, go and find one that is. And we absolutely did. We invented, this side mission that happened where we decided, well, let's just wander around and see, who, like if we ran, I can't remember the name of the gentleman from Topia.
Ewing.
Oh, yeah, Ewing. It was amazing. And he basically took us on a little tour and helped us understand sort of like how the different zones within Topia worked, and kind of sound like giving us a little bit of a backstage pass, it felt like. But we ended up being sort of this wandering mob of tourists going around the environment. It was so cool. And for me, like in my heart, it felt like sort of how I experience live conference events, where like I'm probably like, I've got the least amount of attention span for sitting and listening to somebody give a talk. And like, I'd much rather like go out and have a real interaction, a real connection with somebody like I did with you. And just sort of, like if I come away from a conference having made a good connection like that, that means something to me. And I feel like I got something out of the event, even if it wasn't what was programmatically planned for that experience. So serendipity, that's the sort of the word of the day, for all of this. Cool. So now have you worked with any customers to incorporate Topia yet with anybody?
I want to. If somebody wants to, I am so down. And I know I want to plug a group of people that work in Topia a lot called Topia Builders, who I think actually built the event that we went to, the Unconference event that we went to. They make the most incredible interactive feeling metaverse experiences, and they're really great. And so I want to host an event on Topia so bad, but until then, I've been doing my own thing, building my own things on Topia, and I could just talk about Topia all day, because in addition to this spatial recognition stuff that we talked about before, there's also this ability to incorporate, clicking on an object and a website pops up, or there's this way to integrate the web into a custom environment that you make to create a custom experience. And I just see so much potential for that for virtual events, even asynchronous virtual events, where we've created a space for you, wander around this space whenever you feel like it, and get to know a little bit more about our company, about our nonprofit, about our mission, about what we're doing here. There's so much potential there.
If you think about that, so there is a space that Topia created. I don't know if you had a chance to explore any of their other open areas, but they had one that's sort of this undersea environment. And built into it, they had kind of a scavenger hunt. They had videos you could watch. And I, like you, I started thinking about, like, wow, even if this was sort of a singular experience, I'm just coming in as an individual, or even if I came in with a small team, what an interesting way to do onboarding for employees or a new team, to get them oriented with each other and get them to start practicing some teamwork kinds of things. The potentials of the use cases for that are quite interesting. I did want to say, like, neither of us is affiliated in any way with Topia. We're not paid shills, for any of this. It's an interesting platform. It's one of many that are out there. I work with another one that's called Kickback Space. With Rocco Haro. If you see that, hey Rocco, good to see you. There's another one called Party Space. I had Yuri Filipchuk on a couple of weeks ago, who's in the Ukraine right now. I hope you're doing okay, Yuri. You're definitely in our thoughts and prayers. And so, like, there's this whole category of immersive environments that are coming into play right now. And I think, what's being negotiated with platforms like Topia is, how do you create something that's got that immersive, serendipitous quality to it, without creating something that's got such a high bandwidth requirement that you've got to be on great internet to be able to experience it in a good way. That's a tricky thing, I find.
And probably on the back end, the server space. I'm not a guru about server space, but I know that it takes a lot of energy on their end too, a big lift to make this experience happen. And it's going to be really interesting to see how these different companies navigate that, and how the metaverse in general navigates that, because that's where we're going. That's the era that we're headed to.
It is. And I definitely want to talk about that a little bit, because I think there's implications for events management and online communities and the metaverse. These things are crashing together in interesting ways. I did just want to pause. Like, Amadou's got some really terrific insights that he's talked about. First of all, he made the earlier comment that community as a service. Let's kick ass. I
love that. So I hadn't thought of that. Thank you so much. I love that. Project kick ass, community as a service. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then he had this other statement. So we have a similar virtual village in Airbus Open Village. People who attend are the right people. I can totally relate. That's great. Yeah. So I remember the early days of Second Life, where a lot of corporate organizations would set up an outpost, somewhere in the virtual environment. The problem, I think, the lesson learned we gained from that was that whole issue of, you'd set up a corporate environment, then you'd have people who come in as trolls or spoilers who would kind of disrupt the purpose of the space. I think we've gotten better at creating privacy, situations around that now. So I'm glad Airbus has something like that. I think it's terrific that we've got those environments now as we move forward. And then one more comment here. Great insight for team boosters, a new way of hybrid working, right? Great way to get people working together. And then how can we create a sustainable metaverse? That is the question of the day, my friend. Absolutely. Yeah. So all terrific insights. I always like the conversations from Amadou. So I feel like since the pandemic, and I'm curious your take on this. How are events management platforms and community platforms and metaversal platforms coming together? Because I feel like we're all sort of playing in the same fields, but coming at it from different perspectives.
Yeah. I think the more that I think about the metaverse, the more that I just appreciate life in general and look around and think, wow, I can smell things, I can hear things. The closer that I get to something, the more visible it is. I mean, there's just so much that we take for granted about being alive. I have squirrels outside my window right now that we feed seeds, and they're like chasing each other. And I'm like, this isn't a completely autonomous being that's outside my window that is just doing its thing. I mean, it gives me such an appreciation for life, because when you're trying to recreate the experience of life for human beings in a simulated environment, you run into all these things that you're like, this isn't like real life. This isn't like real life. But there are ways to kind of trick our brains into feeling like it's enough like real life, that we can have the connections that we're seeking and create the communities and the movements that we're looking to do. And so I have the utmost respect for these companies that are going on this journey. And I think that our role as community leaders is to try to look at these environments and bring the human element to it, because we've got the developers, we've got the visual people, we've got these people setting up this environment for us, but it's up to us to bring the humanity and to bring the connection and to figure out how to overcome the technical hurdles between people and the platform, and between the platform and the feeling of actual real human life, and facilitate an experience in that moment that is remarkable enough to want to come back and participate again the next time. Which is how you build a community, is by getting people's buy-in to come back and come back and come back and connect and feel like a tribe there. And so I definitely feel like there's a really important space for us as facilitators of community to be there. And it's such an interesting challenge. It's exciting and not quite there yet. And, all these things all at once right now, in a way that I think that get both of us really excited to bring our full potential into the space, and to kind of learn as we go, to be on the forefront of that, to help other people that are going to find it after us.
Well, I love your emphasis on the human element of it, because if there is one anxiety that I have about the space, is we get so excited about the technologies, and organizations have a tendency to really focus in on those and think, well, okay, if we set this up and we make it beautiful, everybody's going to come and interact. But as you and I both know, that's not the way it works. There needs to be some kind of social lubricant, involved with that. And I don't necessarily mean drinking, but I mean there needs to be facilitation. There needs to be a warm welcome, somebody coming into the space. I still remember, and it's recent, but I think this is going to stick with me for years. Is my first experience coming into Topia was this. The way they architected the welcome space was there's actually this little welcome area that's a bottleneck that you have to pass through to get into the wider conference space. And in that bottleneck area was a community manager who, as I was kind of wandering in, there was like this little virtual couch there, and he was sitting there talking to some other people. And Topia is proximity based, so I heard in my earphone as I'm just going to pass by. I'm just going to slip by and just sort of see what this is all about. But they didn't let me get by. They said, "Oh, hi, Todd," so they could see me. And I was like, "Wait, who's calling my name?" And that created that moment of curiosity for me. And I went over and I started talking to them. And I think that's such a brilliant idea. And I love, for me, that's what stood out about the immersiveness of that platform and what it can possibly do. And we need to build those human elements into the experiences that we create. I'm so glad that you brought that up. Absolutely.
100%. Like they put it so that the connection is right there at the beginning. So there's this one person that's always connecting to all the new people that come in, and you kind of have this choice of, the environment is so inviting that you want to explore it, and you can definitely bypass the human to go explore, but there's also this human there that is going to invite you into the community at large. And so you get to choose, because I've definitely side passed, and just like gone and done my own thing in the welcome world before, but you get to choose what works best for you. And I think that's huge. And little things like that, we need to build into it. And it's our job to pick up where the developers left off and make this work for human beings.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a jump forward, to think a little bit about that convergence that we have. I think it's a jump forward to have those immersive environments. My working theory that I've been sharing with everybody, so far, is I think that the new metaphor for online community is going to be these metaversal environments instead of the social network, news feed, personal profile kind of space. I think that the front door is going to be these more metaversal kinds of spaces, and they'll be supported by the asynchronous post feed, kind of Facebook world of interaction. I think it still needs to be there for people that aren't on at the same time as you. But I think that immersiveness, there's something powerful about that, and I think people want. Like, I don't have the equivalent power of saying hello to somebody as they're passing through, as in an asynchronous text-based world. And I think it's a better world because of that. I think it's extremely powerful, and I think the same value for events, for online events that we run. There's so much more potential for us there, and so I'm excited that you're thinking about those things and bringing that world forward as well.
I think about asynchronous and synchronous a lot, because I think that there are different reasons for both. And I think that the reason that in a Zoom meeting, sometimes we just want to have our camera off, has a lot to do with the reason why we're all on social media all the time, communicating asynchronously to each other via social media. Because people are like, how could I make asynchronous work remote in my remote company? I mean, we're all on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, all these things all the time, 24/7. I mean, I've got my phone right next to me. Like, all of us can just reach over and grab it's right there, right? And so
Sure.
I think that there's a place for synchronous and there's a place for asynchronous. And I think about that a lot as a person who's trying to build these communities together, because I think that they give different things. I read a really interesting book. I'm not going to remember the name of it. I'm going to try to find it. But it laid out in images. It showed that community has been around since the dawn of time, and that we use these different tools in the same predictable ways since the dawn of time. So it showed a tablet with cuneiform on it next to a Facebook page, right? Same type of thought, same type of experience. I took my thoughts, I put them here. If you come to this place, you can see them too. And it laid out events as an integrating mechanism for onboarding or for forming these tight knit bonds. And it showed this tribe doing some sort of intricate tribal dance or something like that next to a conference where people are sitting around at a conference. I mean, it's the same thing. And it's that concept. I think it's the Lindy effect, where if something has been happening for a while, then we can assume that as human beings, it's kind of built into our brain that it probably will continue to happen for a while. And it's really interesting to see how these things are going to play out in the future.
Absolutely. And I love tying it back to our earliest roots. I often talk about sort of the purpose for community as, we're forming a community because we're all running from this woolly mammoth, or we're dying of hunger, so we need to hunt this woolly mammoth. There's, the more powerful communities are tied to things associated with our survival or our identity. And the closer that tie is, the more likely it is to form a swift community, over time. So absolutely fantastic. I can't believe 45 minutes have gone by already.
Oh my gosh.
And this conversation was all that I hoped it would be. You and I think about this stuff a lot, and I knew it was going to be a fun conversation. I guess maybe just to sort of, take this to some form of a conclusion. Let's pull the train into the station here. If someone's interested in working with you, what's the best way to get in touch, and what kinds of services can you provide again?
Yeah. So we at Project Kickass do virtual events. We also help you get broadcast ready so that your window looks the way that you want and it feels the way that you want when you sit down at your computer. And we're rolling out community as a service, which is where we will build your minimum viable community and get it rolling so that you don't have to have as many eyes on it. We'll like do that interviewing piece and like putting out the content and like engaging your people in community, and so that it can grow into the community that you're looking for. Because we didn't even get into this, but if you think about Web3 and you think about DAOs, community is the new currency. And so everybody's going to want a community. Everybody right now wants followers, but in the future, we're all going to want community so that we can create an ecosystem, so that we can create almost our own economy within that ecosystem. It's going to be more important than followers in a really great way that benefits the creators themselves. So yeah, if you're thinking about throwing a virtual event, if you are feeling not so great in your little broadcast zone and you want to get broadcast ready for that big presentation or something like that, or if you're interested in community service, you can find us at pkasolves.com, or you can look up Project Kickass on LinkedIn or whatever your preferred social media is.
I'm really glad you brought up the Web3 piece. Man, we didn't even get to talk about that.
Right?
We're gonna have to do another show just on that. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think community has been very much on the mind of those in the world of NFTs and DAOs, and there's all kinds of implications for that. There's part of my brain that's like, oh, I'm a little skeptical. How's this stuff going to work? And the current versions of it, I'm not super impressed with. But I see the potential. I see all the things it can be. I see the way that it can democratize our control of identity, the way that we bring our interests via virtual wallets into new environments. There's so much potential there for what that can be. So I kind of sort of try to brush the skepticism to one side and try to take a longer view of what's there, because I think we're still in such early days around all of it. But thank you for that. Yeah, let's definitely schedule another time to come back and just talk about that stuff. I love it. Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the show. For those of you who are catching this on the replay, again, please drop in your comments and ideas. I try to read everything, and Rebecca, maybe if you can kind of think of that book to drop in the comments afterwards, that's great. The replay of this is certainly going to be up on LinkedIn. However, you might find it easier to go to YouTube, where I collect all of these in a playlist for under the Clocktower Advisors channel. So I invite you to go there and subscribe and drop your comments there, or on Twitter or out here. We broadcast all three. And I also invite you to tune in next week when my guest is going to be Matas Vleming, who is the community strategist for Open Social. I just had a brief conversation with him this morning, checking in with his team. And we're going to be talking about community building for associations. So if communities, if building communities for your association or not-for-profit is your bag, you're definitely not going to want to miss this. He is a tremendously insightful person, and we're going to have another excellent conversation then. But in the meantime, Rebecca, thank you again, and look forward to getting you back on the show here again sometime soon. Stick around after the stream. We'll chat for a minute. But with that, wherever you happen to may be in the world, if it's morning, noon, or night, I hope you are well. I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy and staying safe. And I will see you again next week. Take care, everybody.